When Edward Morema and his wife Grace boarded a plane from Minnesota to Kenya in March 2023, it probably didn't feel like their usual vacation. This wasn't one of those cheerful trips to reconnect with family, attend a wedding, or enjoy a few weeks under the African sun. No, this trip carried a heavy kind of silence, because this time the couple wasn't returning home to celebrate life. They were returning to confront death. For 2 years, something had been eating away at their family. A mystery that had never been solved. A name that kept coming at every family gathering, every phone call, every whispered conversation. Zachary Musoti. Zachary wasn't just anyone. He was their nephew, a university lecturer at the United States International University, an intelligent, respected man who had seemingly made it in life. By all accounts, Zachary was doing well, good career, good house, and a bright future ahead. But that was until March 2021, when tragedy struck in the most unexpected way. According to police reports and media accounts, Zachary was found dead in a small, dimly lit bedsitter in Kamulu, strangled, half-dressed, and left behind by people who, to this day, have never been identified. The discovery shocked everyone. How could a man who had everything end up like this? But the confusion didn't stop there. His death sparked a storm that will soon divide the family, not just emotionally, but financially. Because Zachary hadn't just left behind memories, he'd left behind an estate worth millions. And with that came one of the most bitter inheritance battles the family had ever seen. At the center of it were two women. The first, Gladys Musoti, Zachary's long-time partner and the woman the family saw as the rightful next of kin. She had been there for years, she knew the family, and she was, for lack of a better term, the official love of his life. And then there was Paris Ondara, a strikingly beautiful teacher from Tala Township Primary School. She also claimed to be Zachary's partner, but not everyone agreed. To many in the family, she was an outsider, someone who had come between Zachary and his peers, someone who the Japanese term as a gaijin. And things only got worse when questions started being asked. According to family members, Perry had missed Zachary's burial in Kisii, something they'd found disrespectful and suspicious. Others whispered that before his death, Zachary had left their home in Roy after ongoing issues in their relationship, choosing instead to live alone in Kamulu, where his life would tragically end. Of course, no official investigation ever linked Paris to Zachary's death. She was never charged with anything, but for Edward, Grace, and the rest of the family, that didn't matter. In their eyes, she was part of the reason their nephew's life fell apart, and that was enough for them to act. So, when the Moremas stepped off that plane at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport in 2023, they weren't there to relax. They were here for a fight. A fight not just for property, but for dignity. A fight to protect what they believed was rightfully Zachary's legacy. They believed that allowing Perry to inherit Zachary's estate would be an insult to his memory. And as the elder couple in the family, Edward and Grace took it upon themselves to lead the battle in court, to make sure that whoever had tormented Zachary in life wouldn't also profit from his death. But what they didn't know was this trip would be their last, because within days of their arrival in Kenya, Edward and Grace Morema will themselves become victims of a gruesome tragedy, one that will shock not just their family, but the entire country. And suddenly, everyone was asking the same question. Was this just a coincidence, or had the curse of the Musomi estate claimed 2 more lives? This is Shadows of Justice, where we dig deep into the dark and mysterious. If you're new here, welcome to the family, and to everyone who's been supporting this channel through every case, every episode, every sleepless night editing, thank you. Your support means everything. My name is Micah Hindi, and as always, you're awesome. Now, let's get into today's story, one that begins in Minnesota but ends in tragedy, thousands of miles away, right here in Nyamira County. Because when Edward and Grace Morema boarded that plane back to Kenya in March 2023, they didn't know they were walking straight into their own death sentence. I would also like to take a moment to sincerely thank everyone who's been supporting Nairobi Insight through everything, the comments, the shares, and even the words of encouragement behind the scenes. If you're new here, here's a fast recap of what is really happening. Recently, we've been going through a bit of a legal situation that honestly caught us off guard, but your love, your messages, and your constant support have kept us pushing forward. We believe in telling stories that matter, responsibly, fearlessly, and truthfully. And even when challenges come our way, we know this community stands with us. If you'd like to help us cover some of the legal fees and keep Shadows of Justice alive, you can do so through the tier below. Every small contribution means the world. It helps us continue creating and protecting the kind of journalism that speaks truth. Thank you always for walking this journey with us. Now, let's get back to business. According to reports, Perry Ondora wasn't planning to let go of the property without a fight. She allegedly told relatives that it would only happen over her dead body. In her eyes, this wasn't just land or money. It was her home. It was where she'd raised her 2 children with Zachary. And she wasn't about to lose it just because, as she put it, some family members didn't like her for having kids from a previous relationship. It's a complicated story because even Zachary himself wasn't new to blended families. His first wife, Gladys Musoti, had 2 children with him as well. They'd been together since 1995, and for years, the family seemed to coexist peacefully. When Perry came into the picture around 2017, she reportedly came in quietly, respectfully, and willing to coexist as a second wife. But Gladys couldn't take it. She eventually left the Roy home, leaving Zachary and Perry behind to manage what had become a growing estate. The couple's properties reportedly included several rental units in Roy and parcels of land in Umoja, where Zachary had been planning to expand his developments. According to Perry's own court filings, income from those rentals were used to pay school fees for the kids and even fund their undergraduate studies. But then, things took another turn. Zachary allegedly started seeing someone new, a 25-year-old woman named Naomi Muranga. The two reportedly met on Facebook while Naomi was working in Saudi Arabia. From what's been said, Zachary promised her a fresh start, a better life back home. And when she finally quit her job and boarded that flight to Kenya, she had no idea what she was walking into. Because not long after she returned, Naomi's life was cut short under circumstances that left everyone asking the same haunting questions. Was her death connected to Zachary's world, or was she simply in the wrong place at the wrong time? The young woman, Naomi Moranga, had reportedly vanished without a trace. One day, she was online chatting with friends, excited about returning home. The next, silence. No messages, no sightings, nothing. Her disappearance stunned everyone, friends, colleagues, even people who barely knew her. To this day, no one truly knows what happened to her, and no one has ever been charged in connection with her case. It became another open wound in a family already scared by tragedy. Meanwhile, back in Roy and Nyamira, Perry Ondora was fighting a completely different war. One that wasn't waged with weapons, but with paperwork, lawyers, and endless court dates. According to court filings and witness accounts, she was determined to retain control over what she considered her family's property, the rental houses, parcels of land, and income streams she and Zachary had managed for years. But her quest for recognitions faced a wall of resistance. Zachary's relatives insisted she had no legal claim, arguing that only Gladys Mosoti, the first wife, possessed a valid marriage certificate. Even the local area chief reportedly refused to write Perry an introduction letter, a small but powerful document that could have opened the door to full administration rights. Frustrated, Perry allegedly took the matter to court, accusing local authorities of denying her rightful access. But when the judgment came down, it favored Gladys once again. To Perry, it must have been betrayal stacked upon betrayal, losing not just a partner, but the life they had built together, piece by piece. According to investigators, that was the breaking point. Court documents later revealed a chilling theory that Perry allegedly reached out to her brother, Dennis Ondora Clement, seeking help to resolve the dispute once and for all. Police claimed that Dennis, a man with a criminal past and alleged connections formed while serving time at Committee Prison, began assembling a small group of ex-convicts. Authorities believe this group crafted a plan so bold and ruthless it sounded like something out of a crime movie. Target the man they saw as standing in their way, Edward Morema, the elder relative leading the succession process. As investigators later reconstructed events, the plan began rolling the very week Edward and Grace landed in Kenya for their family visit in March 2013. Surveillance footage reportedly placed unknown men around Nyakoroto village days before the attack, allegedly scoping out the compound. Then came the night of March 20th, 2023. According to the official police reports, a group of intruders forced their way into the Morema's home. Inside, chaos erupted. The couple was allegedly subdued, their hands bound, and in those final desperate moments, they were said to have been asked to pray. What happened next was unspeakable. Edward was found with severe head trauma and deep stab wounds. Grace's body lay nearby. Police said she had been The intruders reportedly dismantled the CCTV system, scattered objects to confuse investigators, and vanished into the night. The following morning, silence filled the air around the compound. No movements, no sounds, just the faint hum of a house that had once been full of life. When neighbors finally called the authorities after 2 full days of unease, officers broke down the door, and what they discovered inside shook even seasoned detectives. The same house Edward and Grace had proudly built to retire in, the only one they had celebrated with the entire community only months earlier, had now become their resting place. Police sealed off the compound. Crime scene tape waved in the wind as officers combed through every corner, searching for fingerprints, clues, anything that could explain why 2 well-respected elders, fresh from the United States, had been slaughtered in their own home. And as word spread across Nyamira, whispers began to grow louder. Was this revenge? Was this about inheritance? Or was it something even darker? A chain reaction of secrets that started long before anyone realized. It didn't take long before the investigation broke wide open. May 15, 2023, nearly 2 months after the brutal killings, detectives finally got their first real deal. According to police sources, one of the main suspects had allegedly been spotted in Rai, Nairobi. Officers moved fast, but the suspect managed to slip away, sparkling a case that will stretch across counties and end in the most unexpected way. 5 days later, on the afternoon of May 20 at 3 p.m., detectives disguised as hawkers selling Mugombero near the Tanzanian-Kenyan border struck in a perfectly timed sting. In one swift move, they cornered a man believed to be Dennis Ondora Clement, the alleged mastermind, and whisked him away before anyone at the bustling market could even process what had just happened. Witnesses later said all they saw was a small hatchback speeding off in a cloud of dust, already heading toward Migori, then onto Nairobi. When officers searched him, they reportedly found 14 rounds of 9mm ammunition, along with spanners, pliers, and screwdrivers. Tools investigators said were commonly used to break into parked cars. Police also alleged that Dennis had been linked to several violent robberies and murders spanning Nairobi, Nyamira, Kisii, and Migori counties. Soon after, detectives moved in on other suspects. Among those arrested were Perry Ondora herself and two men, Peter Njoroge Kirika and Ezekiel Mugedi Migoro, both accused of aiding in the crime. And as the case entered courts, new details began to surface, chilling digital details that painted a clearer picture of what might have happened the night Edward and Grace were killed. A key witness, once a suspect, took the stand and told the court that his friend, Peter Njoroge Kirika, had borrowed a phone from him the evening before the murders. The phone, he said, was registered under the name Douglas Mungai, a former employee at his butchery who had long since disappeared. According to the witness, Kirika returned the phone the next day, but the SIM card was missing. Later, Kirika allegedly asked him to throw the handset away completely. That single moment will become a turning point in the investigation. Detectives from the Directorate of Criminal Investigations later arrested the witness at a bar in Muthaiga on May 2, 2023. When confronted, he cooperated, helping officers identify Kirika in CCTV footage collected by the homicide unit. Then came the digital forensics. A DCI officer attached to Safaricom, Detective James Makobi, testified that the suspicion phone had received 62,000 Kenya shillings from the victim's mobile account on the very night they were killed. Transaction logs showed that at around 11:29 p.m. to 11:50 p.m. on March 20, 2023, 3 separate transfers were made: 26,000 Kenya shillings, 6,000 Kenya shillings, and 30,000 Kenya shillings, first from Edward's phone, then from Grace's minutes later. 35,000 Kenya shillings was withdrawn from Cooperative Bank ATM in Limuru. To investigators, that was the final confirmation that whoever had killed the couple hadn't just taken their lives, they had gone after their money too. Fast forward to October 2025, and the case is still unfolding. Court records show that Perry Ondora and her co-accused remain before the High Court, facing charges related to the murder of Edward and Grace Morema. Throughout 2023 and 2024, Perry defense team filed several applications seeking bond, arguing that she had deep community ties and young children to care for. Initially, the court declined the request, citing intense public hostility and the risk of interference with witnesses. But in March 2024, a judge finally granted bond under strict conditions: 1 million Kenyan shilling bonds, 2 sureties, relocation from the victim's neighborhood, regular police check-ins, and travel restrictions within Kenya. Later that year, her lawyer sought a reduction and the court lowered the bond to 250,000 Kenya shillings, but the surety requirement stayed. The prosecution strongly opposed any further relaxations, arguing that the accused might abscond. As of the most recent hearings, the prosecution is close to concluding its case, with the defense expected to respond next. The court has expressed concern with loosening bond terms any further could risk the accused leaving the jurisdiction. For now, the case continues, a slow, tense battle in courtroom filed, with grief, suspicion, and public outrage. Outside, many Kenyans still follow every development, searching for closure to a story that began with love turned into loss, and had since become one of the most haunting crime sagas in recent memory. When you trace this story from the very beginning, from the mysterious death of a university lecturer, to the property battles, to the brutal murder of 2 elders, it almost feels unreal, like a tragic chain reaction, one that started with grief, then spiraled into greed, and finally collapsed into bloodshed. At the heart of it all are people, human beings driven by pain, ego, and survival. A family once bound by love and legacy, now forever divided by suspicion and death. And what's most heartbreaking is that none of it had happened. A series of court papers, a few misunderstandings, and years of resentment turned into a fire no one could put out. Today, Edward and Grace Morema are gone. Their dream home, the one they built to retire in after decades abroad, now stands as a haunting reminder of how fragile peace can be. Their story is no longer just about inheritance or property. It's about how unresolved pain left unchecked can consume generations. But in all this, one haunting question still remains. Could they have also linked to the gruesome murder of Zach in his bedsitter that night? Nairobi Insight.